agreed we would start at 5 past. Yeah. Right, so going to carry on these lectures on international trade with the carbon trade theory, which, as I told you, abstracts from the complications of several factors of production and typically focuses on one, and we call it labour. And so we really are going to look at the reasons for trade by simply comparing the labour productivity of various countries across various sectors. And so if we say that a country is going to produce good X, Y, and Z, it's going to be simply because the hours taken in that country to produce goods X, Y, and Z are relatively low compared to other countries. And it's this advantage, this comparative advantage that is going to be the source of trade. But we're also going to see that the simple model that you were exposed to in introductory economics, so this two-country, two-sector, one-factor model, kind of misses some important elements. And in particular, this is the fact that wages are, of course, determined in the economy in a general equilibrium setting, and that you cannot impose on other countries your exports unless they have enough incomes to buy them. And so what we will see is that we need to go beyond the basic model, the carbon trade model with two countries and two sectors, and think about it in terms of a model with a continuum of goods. Okay? But we're only going to finish this stuff next week. So this is, I think, the last slide we were looking at last week. And so if you remember, we were, before looking at the reasons for trade, we were focusing on what would happen if the country were closed to trade. And so we call it autarky, that's the expression. But basically, what this is saying is that if you have a country where people consume and produce only two types of goods, so cloth is sort of really standing here for industrial stuff or manufactured products, and food is standing for primary commodities, then what we're saying is that they would have to produce both. And if they happen to have a low productivity, remember, in terms of hours needed to produce 1 unit of F or one unit of cloth, that's also going to be reflected in low wages. But crucially, we're going to see that even when a country has low productivity in both sectors or industries, it would still make sense to engage in trade. Yeah, because of this powerful concept of comparative advantage. Right, so we were looking at this and saying that home, which we could call the UK, is going to have an equilibrium wage that is equal in the two sectors. So remember, we assume that it's cost us to go from one sector to the other. So unless the wage, the national wage, is equal in the two sectors, cloth and food, there would be no worker willing to work in the low-paid sector. So this means that because we have, by assumption, a competitive economy, the price that people are going to be paying for each good is simply going to reflect marginal costs. And in this case, because we have constant returns to scale and only one factor, marginal cost is actually also equal to the average cost. So just to explain again this expression 4, this is saying that in equilibrium, the price of a unit of cloth is going to reflect its marginal cost. Where does the marginal cost come from? Well, remember, A is the number of hours of labour needed to produce 1 unit of C. So AC is hours needed to produce 1 unit of cloth. AF is number of hours needed to produce 1 unit of food. So if I need AC hours, let's say 10 hours to produce 1 unit of cloth, and if the wage is £20 per hour, then this unit, the marginal cost of this unit is going to be 10 times 20, so £200. Yeah. So the cost, marginal as well as average cost of 1 unit of cloth is £200. That's exactly its price. Yeah. And that's going to be true, of course, for cloth as well as food. So you have exactly the same the equivalent expression. That's equation 6. So we're saying, starting with in Autokeys, so closed economy, the two wages are going to be the same. So if you want, people would keep on moving, switching from one sector to the other, until wages are equalised, so there is no longer an incentive to move across sectors. And when that's the case, as you can see, it follows directly from our expressions for the real wage, which could be measured in terms of the wage, which could be equal to the price over the A in each of the sectors, then that real wage is effectively being equal, is going to give us a relative price for cloth, which is going to reflect exactly that relative productivity. So it's not a coincidence, it follows directly, that the price of cloth over the price of food is just the number of hours needed in cloth to produce 1 unit of cloth divided by the number of hours needed to produce 1 unit of F. Yeah? And so that's why we say the relative price is going to be determined by your technology. More widely, it's going to be determined by relative productivity. Yeah? And this should ring very true, guys, because there are still plenty of people out there that are not traded. So all the non-traded goods will have different prices. And sometimes you might wonder, why on earth is this thing, whatever, haircut, so much more expensive than another type of service? And effectively, it's because, to a very large extent, it's just going to reflect different productivities. Yeah? And so this is saying that, very simply, if it takes, in the closed economy, if it takes twice as many hours to produce 1 unit of cloth that it does to produce 1 unit of F, so if AC is twice as big as AF, then it costs to society twice as much, and the prices, which effectively just reflect cost, are also going to be twice as big. Yeah? So this is a simple but yet powerful. If you have zero economic profits, in many cases, prices of things are simply going to reflect cost, and that cost is related to productivity for non-traded goods. So if you're wondering why, for example, so much stuff in very rich countries, whether it's Norway or Switzerland, are so expensive, why is it that buying a bee or anything really, a haircut, is so much more expensive in Switzerland than it is even in the UK? It has to be because the cost is also much, much higher. Yeah. So this is an important insight. The relative price is going to a very large extent reflect the differences in productivity. Yeah. So I forgot to mention, but you know that from your first year. Normally, we say that ratio is called an opportunity cost. So relative productivity can always be called an opportunity cost. So this is simply saying this ratio, in my example 2, is the opportunity cost of producing a unit of C in terms of F. Why? Because I told you that you need twice as many hours to produce 1 unit of C than to produce 1 unit of F. And so every time you produce 1 unit of C, you have effectively sacrificed 2 units of F. So that's why there's this opportunity cost being equal to. Yeah? So from here, we're still trying to see how much we produce in the economy. And so what we've looked at so far is the so-called the supply side, and it can be captured very simply by a production possibility frontier. So all that is telling us in a diagram is how society can use its factor of production, in this case labour, to produce the two goods that it consumes, C and F. And so the way to represent this should be absolutely straightforward. Suppose, it's not going to happen, but suppose for simplicity that all labour available in the economy were used just to produce units of C. The question would be, how many units of C could you produce? And the answer should be straightforward. I have L workers in total, yeah? Each unit of C requires AC workers, then the number of maximum units I will be able to produce is going to be L divided by A, yeah? And so that's how you get 1 point of your production possibility frontier. So it would be the maximum amount of C would be produced. You get exactly the equivalent expression for food, and then every time you allocate some of your workers to one sector and the others and the remaining to the other sector, you're obviously going to move along a simple line. And why is this a line? And the crucial reason why this is a line is because we have one factor, and the opportunity costs of producing another unit of the other good in terms of the first never changes. So in my example, it's always true that C requires twice as many hours of work as F. Yeah? As you will see in future lectures, in many cases it makes sense to introduce more factors and have this idea of diminishing productivity. So it may well be that if food requires primarily factor of production land, then as I try to switch from, say, cloth industry to food primary commodity sector products, I will be finding it ever more difficult. But in this case, that's not true because we only have one factor of production, so the production possibility frontier is simply a line. Is that all right? So is this obvious, everyone? So this is maximum amount society could produce of F, maximum amount society could produce of C, and any combination of the two is going to require a sacrifice in the other unit. Yeah. So figure 2 now is showing exactly the same thing, but for foreign. So this is the expression 8 is the expression of this line of this production possibility frontier. So just to explain again, what this is saying is there are L workers in total in the economy. I'm going to use them in the two sectors. I'm going to use LC in sector C. Why? Because I want to produce QC units, and each unit requires AC workers. So in my example, I want for 2 and 1. So if I want to produce 200 units of C, I will need, as you can see, 400 workers. And so the other ones that are available will be used in the direction there. So now we're going to look at foreign. And foreign is exactly the same as home, except that it doesn't have the same productivity in the two sectors in question. And we're going to assume that it has people have similar preferences, and that the populations are of a similar size.